MainStreetForum.org. Here's Mo.
Where you at? Hey, this is Mo Bedard, and hopefully I have a plan. You know, it doesn't seem like anybody else out there has a plan. I just can't seem to find one. So I figured I'll have a plan for Main Street out there, and what it involves is reporting you the problems, dissecting the news, propaganda, and then hopefully giving you solutions. And again, at the end of the show, it's all about making money, because that's what we need to do, because most of us need money to solve most of our problems, all right? There's other problems you might have psychologically or whatever. I can't do nothing there. Maybe I can. You can go to my forum at loansafe.org and document your story and talk with others that are having problems. But, you know, again, I think it's all about making money and finding ways to do it ethically and morally, and doing it yourself as opposed to, you know, relying on government, the job czar, the job fairy, to fly down and give you a job. It's not going to happen. You got to fight for yourself out there, okay? And that's what I'm all about. Modifications. We're going to talk a little bit about modifications right now. Loan modifications. The U.S. Treasury, they issued a press release last week that talked about permanent loan modification guidelines for mortgage servicers. That's one of the biggest problems that I see right now. Is my collar is kind of messed up, but is that servicers don't seem to be following their trial loan modifications with permanent loan modifications. It seems like everybody and their mother and their brother and their sister is getting trial loan modifications, but no one is getting the permanent mod. It just ain't happening. And I suspected when this was happening, people were basically just getting put on these trial loan modifications really easily. But when it came down to, you know, after the 90 days of the trial period, nobody can get a permanent modification is what I found. And, you know, I thought when this first came out, it was all just to pump up the numbers. You know, for the Treasury, you got Bank of America, you got Chase coming out with these huge numbers of, you know, we're doing all these loan modifications, but for the most part, they were all trial and they weren't permanent. And right now, the toughest part is these people that got put on the trial is to get the permanent mod. And I see it day in and day out, it's just not happening. So the U.S. Treasury came out with hopefully some guidelines that they can go by to offer these people permanent loan modifications. I'll read a little bit about this story. It's also on loanworkout.org if you want to go ahead and check it out and then print it up. For the most part, again, none of this is mandatory. Whatever the government says as far as the Making Home Affordable program, you have lenders participating in it. You know, just like they're issuing guidelines to the servicers that are participating, but it's not mandated. They don't have to do anything they don't want to do. Okay, and that's always been the biggest problem, and it's never going to get solved. So these new guidelines, you know, it sounds great, but I don't think it's going to do much for the people out there. I think we're going to still see the same issues and the same problems as far as people getting permanent modifications. It's going to be the people that fight tooth and nail to get that modification. And of course you have to have a job, a permanent job and a permanent income, and you have to be able to afford your home and your loan to get a modification, to have all those ingredients come together to finally get real help. But again, if you want to go to loanworkout.org, you could read more on it. I'll read a couple paragraphs here. As part of the administration's ongoing housing market stabilization plan, the U.S. Department of the Treasury and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, commonly known as HUD, today released updated guidance for servicers participating in the administration's mortgage modification program. The guidance refines the documentation requirements in order to expedite conversions of current trial modifications to permanent ones. Okay, so basically they're giving some guidance on the documentation requirements to people, you know, mortgage servicers that can't even get a fax. They can't even return a phone call. So what I think they need to do, the Treasury, the government, is they need to issue fax guidelines and phone etiquette guidelines to mortgage servicers out there that just don't know how to receive a simple fax like this. And then a person on the other end gets that fax and then they put it in the homeowner's file. All right, like old school. Okay, we need some guidance like that. Okay? And then a phone, that someone calls you on the phone, you then return the phone call. Proper etiquette. Hi, Mr. Jones. Yes, you called about the Making Home Affordable program. Yes, I know. Yes, it's proper phone etiquette. I'm calling you back. No, don't thank me, Mr. Jones. I know you've been fighting for 2 years. Yeah. Just stuff like that, all right? That's what needs to be done. I think it needs to go back to grade school kind of guidance and guidelines for mortgage servicers. Guidelines on how to receive a fax and put it in a file. Guidelines on how to return a call and return emails. Okay? I think if we did that first, then we would really be starting on a good foundation for the mortgage servicers out there. All right? And we would have a lot more modifications. But hey, it all sounds good. The Treasury is trying to, get this solved, I think. But in reality, it's not mandatory. The government can't say, banks modify everybody's loan now! No. The only way they could do that is if they bought them all up. That's the only way they could do that, and they're not going to do it. The Federal Reserve, as I had mentioned 2 weeks ago and at the beginning of the show, is not going to be buying these mortgages on Wall Street anymore. Okay? The end of March, the Federal Reserve is not buying billions of mortgage-backed securities anymore. Essentially, we're going to have the banks left with a bunch of, bad loans. We're going to have a market, Wall Street, where they're not going to be buying up these bad loans. Uncle Sam's not going to buy them. The Federal Reserve, Fannie and Freddie, it's going to be really tough to do anything. Interest rates are going to skyrocket, and everybody is going to get obliterated. Excuse me. I have a little frog in my throat. Anyways, so if you want to